Transition Network. We do this every Tuesday at 12:30. So glad you could join us today. We've got a great guest, Jay Camperlino, that I was just introducing, and he'll introduce himself more in just a moment. Before we do that, I'm going to talk to you. Okay, so today's topic is about transition age use, adults using maps as a solution to transition planning and the technology associated with increasing independence, something very important that we want to talk about. We're going to get back to that in just a minute and let Jay introduce himself a little bit further. I'm going to tell you what's upcoming here on CCN in these coming weeks, though. And so on April 18th, next week, I've got my whole clinical staff engaged next week on doing a presentation on telehealth and the public health emergency. And so there are some things that may change in certain professions, some things that won't change in certain professions with the public expiration of the public health emergency. So we're going to talk about all those things next week and really try to make sure everybody is fully prepared for the expiration of that public health emergency. And then on April 25th, we've got our NAD Fourth Tuesday feature, National Association for Dual Diagnosis. Tim Barksdale is going to be our guest. Tim is with Marikey. He's one of the clinical directors for Marikey, and he is a great guest. I'm so anxious to have him on here and just talk to him all about all the great things he's doing with their programs nationwide with Marikey. And of course, that is our fourth Tuesday feature with the National Association for Dual Diagnosis. So I hope everybody can join us on April 25th for that. On May 2nd, we have National Association for Mental Illness. Let's see, Kim, I'm not sure what Kim's title is, but she works a lot with crisis intervention teams, police departments that have crisis intervention teams across the state. And so Kim is going to be our guest on May 2nd. I think she's been with us before on CCM, but we're going to find out, get an update on everything that's going on with NAMI and CIT training. And then on May 9th, we've got Voice It. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Voice It, but this is a great technology for people who might have language that's difficult to understand. Voice It can translate that language into messages to other people so that they can understand what the person is saying. And this is a really great program for many people who might have voice articulation disorders and other things of that nature. So I hope that you'll be able to join us then on May 9th for that. And then we are also going to have a 10-start presentation, mental health, on mental health by Michelle Bagby. A little bit of a vague title there, but I think we kind of get the message that we're involved with a lot of people with mental health disorders in 10-start. We're trying to help them live better lives. I'm sure she's going to talk extensively about PERMA. And if you don't know what that is, tune in May to hear Michelle talk about that. We don't have the exact date scheduled for that, I suppose.
We do. It's May 16th. That's just a typo by me.
Okay. All right. So that's what we have upcoming for CCN. And with that, I hope you'll just join me in welcoming Jay Camperlino. I've known Jay, I think I've known you for at least 20 years. Pretty close to that, if not. But he worked with an agency that I worked with, Tennessee Family Solutions, for a period, moved on to another agency after that, and did a lot of family services for people. And now he is with the Department of Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities as the leader of our MAPS program, Medicaid Alternative Pathways to Independence. Is that right, Jay? That's what we're talking about today. So I'm so happy to have you on here as a guest. And so can you start us off maybe just with a little introduction of yourself?
Thank you, Bruce. Yes, as you indicated, my name is Jay Camperlino. I'm currently the Youth Transition Director for the department, and my entire charge is to help develop, lead, and implement the Medicaid Alternative Pathways to Independence program. I've served in this industry for over 20 years, ranging from every position you can imagine, beginning my career as a direct support professional to a class member that had recently transitioned out of Clover Bottom, providing direct support, to actively opening up my home and providing 24-hour family model supports out of my home, and then most recently the executive director of an organization that provided family model services to youth and adults. this program, the MAPS program, it pulls at me. It really touches every ounce of my fiber. As when Jordan first approached me with the concept, it was one that really just hit home, and all of the intended approaches of this program really just made sense in my mind. When I was thinking about the opportunity to present to this group today, I was told I would need to provide a fun fact about myself, and so I suppose I'll do that now. I am a former collegiate athlete as well. We were talking a little bit about the jersey behind me, which was my father's, but it was actually basketball that permitted me to move from my home in Michigan down to Tennessee. I actually played at a local university for a few years. And so basketball is near and dear to my heart. And so that's what brought me to Tennessee. Met my lovely wife at Trevecca Nazarene University, and the rest, you should say, is history.
Now that is something I did not know about you, Jay, that you played basketball. So were you a shooter or a rebounder? What was your role?
I don't know. I was 5'8", and so the only thing that 5'8" people could do in basketball is handle the basketball and play good defense. So I was the hustler on the court that was the first one back, and obviously trying to disseminate the basketball to the main scorers on the court. So still holds true to me to this day. I coached, and it's obviously very much a part of me today.
Yeah, there's been a lot of great 5'8" and shorter players, though. So Spud Webb, Bugsy Bogues. I've heard of a few other. There are a few others. Actually, the guy Noel out at Kansas State, he was really good too, and I think he's 5'8". So that's it may be short in stature, but not short in skill and ability.
It was a fun time in my career, and certainly the knowledge that I developed has proven helpful as I prepare I've got two boys, and so as I help prepare them for their basketball development, I'm enjoying passing on everything that I've learned to them. So more basketball in my future.
That's good stuff. I'm sure being a basketball coach and a player probably helps you a little bit as you're thinking about this MAPS program and everything that you're trying to accomplish with that. So I'm going to turn it over to you and let you present what you have, and then I'll probably pipe in periodically and ask some dumb questions, but just be tolerant of that, if you will. And of course, I want to encourage everybody in our audience to ask their questions as well. You can either put them in the chat box or raise your hand, and we'll give you an opportunity to come off of mute and ask your question directly to Jay. And I'll stop periodically and just ask for questions like that. So with that, Jay, I'll turn it over to you.
The term transition aids, it holds a significant meaning to me. And if you think about those young adults that are approaching that transition stage in their life, that point in time is often referred to as standing on the cliff or sitting on the cliff, if you will. And so visually imagine that you're sitting on the cliff of a mountain, you're overlooking these valleys, these rivers, these peaks, the terrain, and essentially what you'll see is endless visuals of what possibilities may exist. And so when I think about that, I get extremely anxious and nervous, and I can only imagine the feelings of anxiety and questioning that the folks that we're targeting in this program may be experiencing as they're preparing for life's next journey as well. Medicaid Alternative Pathways to Independence, otherwise known as MAPS, is really our approach to offer some solutions in that regard. I always include within the presentation just a visual of me. I know that you can see me today, but my legal name is Jason Camperlino. I've gone by Jay my entire life. You can call me both. Just recognize that if you call me Jason, I'm still getting used to it. I've been with the state of Tennessee now almost a year, and I'm still questioning, are you talking to me or not? It just may take me a minute to respond. And again, my charge is to really help and implement the Medicaid Alternative Pathways to Independence program called MAPS. I'll call it MAPS for the duration of today, just for simplicity. I envision that there'll be a few topics that we talk about today, and I'm really interested in answering any questions that you guys may have. So please, Bruce, feel free to chime in. I'm sure the chat function may be available, and so don't hesitate to chime in when you guys have questions.
I wanted to point out one thing, Jay, about your commitment to this concept and this program of maps, though, because I'm recalling back to our Halloween celebration when you came dressed with maps all over your body.
I I
That
talk
was
and I talk and think maps every day. So when it came time to actually, what was I going to be for a Halloween costume, it just made sense.
what a
That I
great
had
way to introduce that to everybody. That was a great costume, very creative.
had a lot of fun with that, that's for sure. So today's presentation will touch on a few different highlights. One, I want to talk a little bit about the beginning, what brought us to this notion of creating a program for this transition age population. Two, I want to get into the finalized product of the outcomes and the milestones that we formulated. Essentially, think of this as our menu. We want there to be a selection of services and programs that folks that engage and embark through the MAPS programming can select of what they wish to work on during the period of time. Once that milestones and those outcomes have been formally identified, I want to start blending the MAPS program with transition services because those two approaches are so intertwined that you really need to consider the MAPS program in conjunction with those transition services. And I think if we do that collectively, we'll put some of those pieces together and see why some of the constructs of the MAPS program really will help this target population achieve greater levels of independence. As we talk about those transition services and the combination of the MAPS programming, there's a couple of technological solutions that are pretty groundbreaking for the state of Tennessee that I want to dive into a little bit more. One is the virtual community resource map. You guys may have heard of these in some other sessions. I am a staunch advocate for this approach. I believe that the VCRM has applicability to impact not just folks within the MAPS program, but folks in general. I personally have a VCRM that I will show you later on in the presentation, and I'll discuss how this map, helps me stay on task with what I need to do and how I've continued to build mine out and share it with those that are around me so that we can collaborate on interests that I have. The second technological solution that we'll highlight is formal travel training that has been developed both for the actual persons receiving the supports and the travel trainer, recognizing that a true focus of independence has to prioritize that individuals can navigate their communities independently. And we believe through a series of training courses and utilizing technology, folks will be able to take those next steps to learn how to navigate their communities independently. Finally, I'll wrap up with essentially what's next on the horizon. I mean, this project, and I've communicated, has been the funnest project I've worked on, and I'm really excited to continue to take this to the next step. But before we take that next step, I want to take you back to the beginning. The beginning started with identifying goals. And just like any program, our goals really assimilated to recognizing the target population that we feel we wanted to provide wraparound supports to. And it started with those transition-aged youth or adults. First goal was to develop a program that would essentially help those transition-age youth and adults as they navigate from that daunting and overwhelming feeling of looking over the cliff to prepare them for greater levels of independence as they approach adulthood. The second is we took this opportunity to evaluate how we could incentivize our payment structure and put that in alignment with actually achieving outcomes, moving away from some of the traditional fee-for-service approaches and recognizing that payment structures will be developed and incentivized to those providers when outcomes and milestones are achieved. And so that was a goal of ours. We wanted to formalize a program that reinforced true outcomes and ensuring that we're delivering on the promises that we've made. The third goal was to utilize enabling tech and employment as the primary target for our services. And, if we do all of this, we believe that a final outcome from the department would be to reduce some of the dependency on traditional long-term services and support. Here is where I tell another personal story. Being a former foster parent, I had a gentleman that lived with me for a few years, and we were doing well. I thought we were really making tremendous strides. He was working in the community, developing relationships. We were really blending well together. And lo and behold, to me, I didn't realize that this gentleman was developing a dependency on me my services, my supports. He was looking at me for the constant praise, the recognition. While very motivational, my proximity to him during his path was becoming a barrier to his true independence. And so when I think of the MAPS program, I think about that gentleman that lived with me. And had I not been inadvertently a barrier to his independence, how could he be living today? And so I take all of these goals, and obviously this started to create the beginning of the development of the MAPS program. And so with those goals, we got to work. We had to develop the program in its entirety. And again, this was the funnest development phase that I've ever experienced, truly creating from the ground up systems and philosophies and services and approaches and partnerships, and getting to a point where we could formally launch this program and begin offering these services to those transition-aged individuals and beyond. And I'm proud to say we launched the program on November 1st. We conducted a series of interest surveys. We developed an enrollment plan. And on November 1st, you guys are probably well aware, we enrolled our first person into the MAPS program. Her name is Gabby. Gabby lives in Williamson County, and I cannot wait to continue to follow her journey as she continues to achieve those milestones as she navigates her MAPS programming. The Medicaid Alternative Pathways to Independence program, obviously, if you go to our website, there's going to be a series of information there that you can access and learn more. But this is language and a video that was directly pulled from it. I like to talk MAPS, but our communications team here at the department have really done a much better job than I ever could at developing material that really describes this program in its entirety. So this language describes that MAPS is a program that will set people with intellectual and developmental disabilities on a path to learn skills to help them work, live independently, and learn about their neighborhoods and find hobbies that interest them. We believe that giving them the tools and the technologies that they need to support themselves will help them achieve their goals. Now I'm going to turn it over to one of the short videos that'll actually tell you a little bit more about the program.
Have you heard about DIDD's new program, MAPS? MAPS stands for Medicaid Alternative Pathways to Independence. MAPS is a new program that supports people with intellectual and developmental disabilities who want to increase their independence at home, at work, and in their community. So who is MAPS for? MAPS is a diversion program. That means it is mostly for people who may not be eligible for Medicaid or long-term supports and services, but who need additional support and resources to be successful. It is for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities who want to get around the community more independently, create networks with people, places, and activities in their community, get a job and grow professionally, use enabling technology to increase independence in all areas of their life, and develop independent living skills. You might be eligible to enroll if you're a high school student preparing for graduation, a young adult who has recently left the school system, or you're a person waiting for employment and community first choices waiver services. We want to support you to create a vision for your life and find the right pathways to living that life independently. To learn more about the program and eligibility, go to the MAPS page on the DIDD website.
That lovely voiceover is from our very own communication officer named Carly Carlton. She just did a tremendous job of developing this visual for the actual MAPS program and allowing that to tell the story of what this program is really trying to encompass. And I think it just does a fantastic job in a minute and a half of capturing the true essence of what the MAPS program is intending to do.
That was Carly on that video.
Incredible, right?
Absolutely amazing. I had no idea she had the skill to do that. Wow.
Bruce, I'm telling you, our communications team is second to none. They truly are phenomenal.
That's amazing.
So we started with the program and we knew those goals and we developed material, but we had to really come up with our approach. And so I've used this slide in several presentations before, and I continue to think that this visual does a wonderful job of looking down at the program from a bird's eye view. And so what this slide does right here is it really describes the main outcome areas, the milestones that we are recognizing as associated with those outcomes, and the actual services that the provider organizations are implementing to help those persons supported achieve independence in the particular milestones. These green areas right here, home, work, and community, those are the three main outcome areas that we've identified as the starting point. Let's recognize that if we can offer solutions to transition age folks at home, at work, and in the community, the likelihood that those folks would be set up on a greater capacity for independent living is higher. So let's take those broad constructs of home, work, and community and start drilling down a little bit. Where within the home setting can we identify specific goals for persons that they can work on that will ultimately lead to a more independent lifestyle? And so within the home outcome, you will see that we are offering 4 milestones through the course of the program in which an organization, a provider agency, would implement a service known as independence coaching that would help achieve milestone independence in one of these 4 areas: the home and safety milestone, the personal hygiene milestone, the health management milestone, and the financial management milestone, working towards greater independence in the home outcome. And so as you progress through this visual, think of this almost as the menu. When an individual selects to receive MAPS programming services, they look at this menu and determine over the course of the year, these are the goals or the milestones that I want to work on during this programming year. And they may choose one home outcome and one community milestone and one work milestone. This menu is intended to allow the person to choose at their pace what goals they want to work on through the course of the year, with a couple of caveats. You will see in here a couple of bulleted milestones that have been identified. One is the virtual community resource map, which we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about later. We have identified that the very first milestone that folks will begin working on when they begin receiving MAP services is that virtual community resource map. I highlight this because it's the first one. It is truly a heart and soul of our program, and we want to work on it first. And we believe that through the implementation process of that VCRM, it informs the entire planning team what milestones could follow next after the completion of that VCRM, because there's a series of evaluations and interactions in the development of a VCRM where we learn about the person's preferences, interests, places of belonging, and so that we can tie it all together and begin continuing down a path of achieving milestones through this actual visual. I think this is very helpful. I try to bring it up anytime I can because essentially this is the menu of the MAPS programming. Folks will choose which milestones they want to work on over the course of the programming. I highlighted peer mentoring as a service as well because I'll touch on that at the very end. That's going to fall into line as to what's next. Had a lot of fun trying to identify a quality peer mentoring support service that we are going to implement, and we're finally taking some good strides to get to that point.
So Jay, I may be jumping ahead, but so who facilitates the development of this VCRM?
Excellent. It is all of these milestones that you see right here are payable milestones to the provider organization. So when the provider organization achieves independence in one of these milestones for the person that they're supporting, that is when they are eligible for value-based payment structures. So when a provider organization is identified, they will begin working with the person in conjunction with their planning team, the innovation coordination agency, anybody that the person wishes to be involved. The provider organization is ultimately responsible for implementing that VCRM with that person. And at the conclusion of the VCRM process, our partnership with the Charles Lee Center, they are the ones that are conducting the independence fidelity by verifying that, in fact, this milestone has been achieved, and that is what allows for release of payments to the provider organization for achieving the milestone with that person supported.
Are there any folks who are not appropriate for this type of program, or that you wouldn't have referred to the MAPS program, or would it be pretty well open to anybody?
It's a great question, and one that we've chewed up countless times. We do believe that there's a demographic that is probably going to benefit the most from this program, obviously. Folks that are inherently interested in utilizing technology, folks that are of that transition age nearing the exit of the high school programming part of life. We think that those folks really are going to benefit from the ability to access all of these milestones. However, it would be short-sighted if we limit the population enrollment to only that demographic. So the final conclusion is that if a person can benefit from even one of these milestones, then we should pursue that. And we would ensure that enrollment into the MAPS program was available.
Okay, thank you for that, Jay.
Great question. So after you take these outcomes and the milestone services, so you've got the MAPS program in one hand. The second hand that I wanted to braid together are those combinations and conversations regarding transition services. My experience wasn't very involved with transition services. I've had to inform myself, and there's a lot of information out there and a tremendous amount of state partnerships and private sector organizations and school systems that are really collaborating and trying to push forward, offering the best services for those folks that are nearing that transition age. So it's been a lot of fun learning, and I still consider myself, a beginner in learning what some of the processes include. But I began familiarizing myself by going through the Department of Education at the federal level and learning their interpretation of what transition services are. So what you'll see right here are exact clips from the U.S. Department of Education as they have presented what transition services look like. A truly successful transition process is the result of a comprehensive team planning that is driven by the dreams, desires, and abilities of the youth. We're used to that. We've seen a lot of that in all of our person-centered planning process. So the construct of a transition plan isn't anything that's necessarily brand new to the department, with the exception of recognizing that the target demographic is that younger adult that's about to pursue lifelong living in an independent structure. Now, a transition plan is included with all of those transition services, and this plan provides the basic structure for preparing an individual to live, to work, and play in the community as fully and independently as possible. There's a couple of words highlighted in that direct definition, and if you'll draw conclusions to the outcomes that MAPS services have identified, you'll see the same concept. Folks are going to live, well, that's directly applicable to the home outcome within the MAPS program. You'll see that a successful transition plan encompasses work or planning towards employment, which is the second outcome for the MAPS program, which is work. And the third one is community. We want to recognize within the MAPS program that our outcomes directly align with a truly successful transition plan as recognized by the Department of Education. Now, there are elements to the transition planning process that obviously once you continue to dive in and you peel back layers of the onion, there are so many braided opportunities for transition age individuals to become even more overwhelmed with what's happening around them. And so the next couple of slides really begins to show how many pieces are included in the puzzle of transition planning. Obviously, there are folks that will develop an IEP, and it's not enough to just have an IEP. Those IEPs should be accessible and accurate. How is the person supported and their planning team making that IEP accessible to other members of the planning team? Oftentimes, those IEPs are actual booklets of paper, and without the individual taking them to every meeting, that IEP doesn't become accessible. And with so many people contributing to transition services, oftentimes there's developments occurring where the IEP may not be the most accurate because of the number of people that are involved. So these key elements of transition planning are absolutely necessary, but by design, they're also inherently not working with each other to ensure that all of this information is accessible and are accurate. Obviously, after the IEP meeting is developed, there should be transition planning. There's meetings established, there's goals, all of that transfers directly over to some of the IEP or the transition plan itself. We begin talking about pre-employment services because we all recognize the importance of employment for folks to achieve greater levels of independence? Well, we can't just talk about pre-employment. We also have to we have to recognize that there are federal and state constructs that have to be included within that pre-employment planning. And that's where our folks from PRES or VR comes in. So now we're taking these goals, these plans, and we're trying to make sense of one of them as they connect to each of the other one.
So Jay, this starts while the person's still in the education system. And like, when does it start? When do you begin doing this work of transition?
Well, I think it begins as soon as somebody enters into the high school. You'll formally hear people indicate that transition planning can begin as early as 14 years old.
Right.
When services become accessible for other outside interagency states. And you'll see on the next slide that you begin bringing in some of those external partners to begin assisting in that transition planning. So you're bringing in those interpersonal education referrals, people outside of the education system that can really begin helping that person achieve transition planning processes. So you'll see VR, other state agencies begin to get introduced. Coincidentally, this is where we now find the MAPS programming. We are now a state agency that is another interprofessional education referral that can come in and try to assist those persons through the transition planning processes themselves. Okay, now you've got VR involved, and VR services, as we all know, there's a host of services that are provided. So now we've got all of these elements of transition planning, and it can be somewhat convoluted. There's one hand talking to the next. Is the plan that was created at this level, is it applicable to this other interprofessional education agency? And so there's just some opportunities for things to fall through the cracks. And again, going back to the visual of witnessing this person sitting on the cliff, looking at what's in front of them without a clear path, then sometimes those opportunities to achieve independence feel even more anxiety driven. And so our approach is recognizing that through all of this transition planning, coordination is the most important component of the transition planning. It is critical to the success of the transition services, and they are best delivered when within a framework of the structured planning, meaningful youth and family engagement, and there's state agency coordination and accountability. This was, again, another definition directly from the Department of Education. I added the last piece because I think it's going to be that enabling technology component that really puts the bow on it. I think that coordination is absolutely necessary, but if we aren't capitalizing on the importance and the availability of enabling technology to pull some of these pieces together, we're missing a tremendous opportunity. So I'm going to add the enabling technology, and it's the technology that pulls it all together. This is where we begin entering the virtual community resource map. If you are movie buff, this would be the part in the movie where there's dramatic music playing behind us in anticipation of something important. I cannot scream loud enough how cool the virtual community resource map is and just how powerful this is, that's going to allow us to tie those elements of that transition planning into a single source that can be immediately accessible by the person that is formally delivering the services. This is
the Lonesome Dove soundtrack in my mind, just as you
Which one did you get?
The Lonesome Dove soundtrack. I don't know if you're familiar with that miniseries, but it had a great soundtrack. Anyway, but I was going to ask you, this means you have to engage people while they're still in school, though.
Indeed, and that is the intention.
Yeah, that's something that hasn't been done enough of, obviously, and that's one of the real needs for this program, it seems.
Oh, absolutely. If we would, the MAPS programming allows for individuals to access 3 years of services. The funding is approved for folks to pursue services on a short-term service approach. At the conclusion of the 3 years, we want to be done. We want to reduce that dependency on the person. Going back to my story of the family-based and that gentleman developing that dependency on me, we want the MAPS approach to take the same perspective. How can we reduce that dependency on our supports? And therefore, it's been recognized that the 3-year access to the programming is going to provide the best access to that. So at the conclusion of it, we hope to tie our services with those folks that are readily leaving the high school as well. So by the time MAP services are done, they're exiting the high school and they've been afforded the solutions and technologies that they need to live independently.
We've got a question in the chat box down here, Jay. Babs, you want to cover that question?
Yeah, it says, is the VCRM available to people who are not eligible for MAPS?
Absolutely. It is available right now through Google My Maps. It is a free platform that I believe everyone should actually familiarize yourself with, whether you're providing services in an organization, whether you're working with different demographics, or even your personal. And I'm going to get into my map here in a second, because I use my map to collaborate with my wife at home. It gives me another opportunity to communicate at my home with my wife when she loves that I do that. So it gives me another opportunity to collaborate directly with her. So to answer your question shortly, yes, accessing a virtual community resource map is immediately accessible for everyone right now through Google My Maps, not Google Maps, Google My Maps. This is just a visual of an example. If you went to our website right now, you could pull this up. While I think this is helpful to see a visual, I think some of the next slides are going to provide more of a look under the hood what a VCRM is. Well, I want to define it first. So the VCRM is a personalized virtual platform programmable to each person's specific interests, goals, and important locations within the community. It's my map. It's the places, people, and interests that are important to me. So if you begin thinking about how we would develop a virtual community resource map for a transition-age individual, we have to program this map for their interests, the people that they will identify, the activities that are important to them, so that at the conclusion of that, their map is very personal and available to them. It can include also those independence goals that we've identified at home, at work, and in the community. We've all seen ISPs or PCSPs and IEPs where those goals are formally laid out on a one-page sheet that everyone can access. Why can't we also program a virtual location that will house the specific goals directly on a virtual platform? That's the biggest construct right here. Now notice, you'll see that we continue to identify those homework and community. Again, I'm going to reinforce those outcomes in any area and opportunity that we get. This VCRM will also accommodate storage and organization of all noted plans, goals, and partnerships to achieve a successful transition. So in other words, I can formally upload my IEP, my transition plan, my PCSP into my virtual community resource map. My virtual community resource map can be a housing location for all of the tools and documents that have been developed. And the key word is that it's virtual. It's available in your pocket. The folks that we're supporting, they have access to a cell phone that we provide. This cell phone can be their access to their virtual map. So at a moment's notice, they can pull up their map and all of the associated plans within. Now that individual no longer has to carry all of these binders for all of their plans. They can carry their phone and house all of the information that they need directly accessible to them.
And Jay, what a relief to a person like me. I cannot keep up with paper. I've got to be able to access it electronically. So that's such a great feature of this program that you're offering, and the virtual VCRM.
And that's where I envision that this access has tremendous applicability beyond just transition planning. If we are truly going to empower the folks that we're supporting and give them the tools that they need to drive their lives, they should have the immediate access to their plans in a mechanism that makes sense to them. And so this is one of those approaches that we will be able to highlight. Okay, I'm going to get into a little bit. I want to show you guys my map real quick. Okay, so the virtual community resource map, it pulls together, many of the actual processes that have been developed. And so give me a second. You should be seeing my map coming up now. You guys see my map? Can you give me a thumbs up if you see this? Awesome. So what you see right here, it looks just like a map, and it's completely interactive. I can move it around. I can identify places that are interesting to me. On this left-hand side, you will see main areas. These are called layers. Layers are the equivalent to main topics. And so my main topics are health and wellness, employment and career development, community engagement, leisure and volunteer, and independent living. Just so happens that these goals can coincide directly with folks that are in transition planning. What are their goals? Do they want to have a goal for independent living? Do they want to identify who are involved in that person's life that are necessary for their independent health? Well, for me, it's my primary care physician. So when I click directly on one of these locations, it takes me to a window where I can pull up a screen that has allowed me to program important information about my primary care doctor. My doctor's name is Andrea Weddle. I've made a note about Dr. Weddle. She is a no-nonsense physician. She is tough on me, and I appreciate how direct she is. I can then also embed YouTube links in here that I, at a moment's notice, if I wanted to go to, it would allow me to go to the YouTube link. I happened to import in here the Doogie Howser theme song, which probably isn't going to load right now, so we won't wait on that. But just an example that is something that you can include into your actual virtual community resource map into that particular place. I get her address, I get her phone number, I immediately get her website address, and I can also begin uploading attachments here into every specific layer. So now, as I build out my map, I start recognizing all of those locations within the community that are important to me. I can go through, and each one of these locations that you see on this map are direct things that I have recognized as are important to me. So I'm just going through. My wife went to the College of Nursing. This is the one that's in Knoxville, so I recognize that as a location that's important to me. I've got some employment and career development goals that are important to me. Obviously, my leisure and my volunteer is important to me. I've got a lovely headshot of Commissioner Turner there telling me that he's my boss. When I go to work, I better remember my badge. These are all cues and prompts that I'm giving myself within the creation of my own virtual map that is going to be, again, immediately accessible. So the power of the VCRM is it's virtual. One, it allows you to access it remotely and anywhere you are, but two, it's also customizable and it's perfectly accessible for you and your continued progression into your actual programming. Okay, I'm going to get back to my PowerPoint. I saw a question come in, Babs. Would you mind
Yeah, we've
taking
got two questions real quick. One, can the IEP that you upload into Maps is it just uploaded or can it be edited once it's uploaded? That's the first question.
They're all uploaded as a PDF version, so it would, in fact, be a completed version of something. All of the documents are stored on Google Drive. So once they're uploaded into the Google Drive, that's where you upload them directly in to your actual virtual community resource map. Good question.
Okay, and then the other question is, do you have to have a Google account for this program?
Currently, yes. Because the platform that is utilized is through Google My Maps, it is the access to a Google platform that gives you the access to the Google Drive as well as to the Google My Maps platform. I would envision that the VCRM, we're scratching the surface on it. That there is, opportunities here to begin partnering with other entities and technological systems that will allow collaborative efforts to result in a more desirable product. And so I'm saying this to say that I wouldn't be surprised if 5 years from now we've taken the construct of a virtual map and we've built on it. We've made sure that we've created and or developed our own so that we could carve pathways to utilize other applications that will help persons begin navigating their community or accessing other technological solutions that will greatly promote higher levels of independence. And that really is a key segue into the next component of technology that's offered through the actual program. The MAPS programming is one of the milestones, the Community Navigator Service. We have partnered with AbleLink and Tech First Shift to develop a fully customized travel training curriculum for direct support and transition-aged youth to develop individual traveling routes in the community using the Wayfinder application. So now think about this. We've got, on one hand, we've got the virtual community resource map that we've programmed that tells all the person places of interest for that person in the community. On the other hand, we need to help that person access those person places and locations in the community. And our approach to that is by offering a formalized travel training curriculum that has been created for the staff and the person supported to work on it together, so that as a person is navigating their travel training curriculum, they have a travel trainer that's doing it with them, that they are going through each step of the process, learning possible safety recognition sites within the community, helping to develop individualized traveling routes for that person so that the person can exit their home, go to their location using the Wayfinder application on their phone. So they're able to go from their VCRM to the Wayfinder application to actually get step-by-step prompts on what they need to do to get to that location that they've identified as important.
That's
taking a break there.
It was not clear to me when I saw a previous presentation of this, was how easily you're able to get directions from one place to another. That's a great feature.
So on the VCRM, you get the access to the traditional Google Maps, which it'll provide you step-by-step driving directions and or walking directions. But the Wayfinder application is a personalized route development program that allows us to help that person identify a specific route to that person that will include the steps that they need. So my first one might be, Jay, you're going to the grocery store. Go get your wallet, get your keys. Check. Next. Step 2, Jay, exit the door and lock your door. You don't want somebody coming in stealing your cat. Step 3, get into your car and turn right. So we would help develop a personalized route for that person to access those locations in the community that are important to them. We've done some of this through already. We've seen some of the implementation of the Wayfinder application, and here's another video. I'll be happy to share this PowerPoint. I think our time is probably getting a little bit limited. So in fairness, to try to continue moving this along, Kenny is a person that has used the Wayfinder application personally and independently in the East Tennessee region. And here is a video of Kenny using the Wayfinder application to get from his home to his work. And so that Wayfinder application is something that we are making readily available to all of the MAPS participants as they are pursuing MAPS milestones and goals. Okay, the video is going to come up. I'm going to fly through it, guys. Bear with me because I want to make sure we've got adequate time for questions. So what's next? I need to gather data. Right now, we've enrolled 69 persons within the MAPS program, 60 in the middle region, 9 within the east. We've got 9 more persons that we will enroll over the course of the month of April. Of those 69, we have 34 of them that are actively working on a virtual community resource map. I can't wait till I can show you guys Gabby using her virtual community resource map. I think that we can actually show some personal touches of how this programming is directly impacting some of those folks. We're going to see how this will then become a possible solution to other folks who are considering organizing and coordinating their transition planning. So not only do I want to get some data on the completion of milestone and objectives, also the VCRM, but I also want to track from a beginning standpoint, how many milestones are we able to achieve over the course of the 3 years programming for the 1,250 individuals that we've gotten approval to fund. Ideally, that we're also able to take that data and produce a hypothesis of how we've been now successful at preventing dependency on long-term service. Have we been successful at preparing those transition-aged persons with enough access to technological solutions and independent support where 5 years down the line, they won't have to turn to the state of Tennessee for access to traditional long-term services and support. So next, I want to gather some data and continue to push that needle forward of how this programming is going to help provide more independent lifestyles for folks that we're supporting. Next is I have to finalize the peer mentoring supports. From the very construct of the program, it was recognized that peer mentoring will be a component. And so we've approached the implementation of the peer mentoring supports through a recognition of a phase 1 and a phase 2 process. First one is developing a formal training curriculum for the actual mentors themselves. Before a peer mentor gets involved to formally deliver peer mentoring supports, we want to ensure that there's adequate curriculum and training that's incorporated. So I'm actually proud to report that we hope to announce that formal solicitation next week. I think I finally got all the pieces in place to move forward with identifying a partner who's going to develop or revise a curriculum that may exist to address areas that we have recognized as important. The second phase is once we get that training, we want to partner with a vendor who's going to implement that training, that onboarding, and that evaluation processes so that it's actually formally, we can say that we've put some research behind the development and implementation of the peer mentoring support. And lastly, I'm going to get ready to do it again, because while we've got approval now for MAPS version 1.0, I'm confident that through these approaches and these constructs, we're going to gather some data and continue to offer MAPS version 2.0 and 3.0 so that this can just become, a staple within the service delivery system of DIDD. Okay, that is my last slide. I'm going to stop talking right now, take a drink, stop sharing, and guys, please let me know if you've got any questions.
Take a breath, Jay. So Babs, we get another question?
Yeah, I think it was addressed. Can you share the status of the peer mentoring RFI?
Yeah, we submitted a request for information. Basically, we wanted to know how much it would cost us, what would all be involved in the formal development of that training curriculum. So we took that RFI, and now we're ready to propose the actual formal solicitation of the vendor who's going to revise, develop, and prepare for the creation of that training curriculum. And again, we're in the final stages of navigating that contract around our processes here at the state. I'm hopeful next week we can publish it on open line, get it on the MAPS website, and begin accepting solicitation bids for that phase one of that project.
Yes, Jay, you can feel free to say, okay, boomer, to this question, but is there any cost to setting up a Google account?
No.
Okay.
And you may run into a cost if you need to increase storage on the Google Drive, but a standard Google account will offer you access to a certain allotment of storage through the Google Drive.
All right. And Jay, this seems like it is so critically important. I mean, I don't want to attach this too much to the lack of staff that we're able to find out there to support people, but it's so critical that we help people get to whatever level of independence that they can out there, because it's difficult to find people to stay with them all day, to kind of lead them through their activities. This just seems like something that's going to be critical for us going forward.
I definitely agree with that. And I often think of those folks who may have turned to state services because they fell off the cliff, that because by the time they exited the high school, some of those supports may not have been in place, and therefore the only result was a crisis scenario that they ultimately could have averted had there been adequate solutions and supports in place that prepared that person for that next stage of life. So if we can touch that person then and reduce dependency on long-term services indefinitely, it's going to better allow us to utilize our resources for those folks that need it. Couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah. Jay, thank you so much for being our guest today. We appreciate this so much. I think you got this message out to some more people that I think can help you spread the message. We've got another question here. Donna is full of questions. So let's go ahead and process those couple questions before I close.
How can independent IDD nurse case managers contact to be available to assist? And will you share your last slide again?
The MAPS website really houses everything. If you go to the DIDD MAPS website, which is right here, it takes you directly to where the application can be accessed, all of the information that's been created. And so we do need help in spreading the word. We've got funding approval for 1,250 folks, and we've only enrolled 70 to date. We hope to get to 400 by the end of year one. And so I think that there is the possibility of continuously helping spread the word. And so 3 things that I've told people as they're taking on this overwhelming information. 1, just know the name of the program, MAPS. It exists for transition-aged youth individuals that incorporates a map, and then just have them call me. I talk MAPS all day, every day. So I'm happy to answer questions. I will travel all over the state. If there's an opportunity to speak about the program, I'm looking forward to those opportunities. So 1, help spread the word. And two, if you identify a possible group that would benefit from learning this information, put them in contact with me. I will be more than happy to take that bridge building and make sure that those end users get the information that they need.
Well, I'm going to be spreading your name far and wide, Jay, for this program. This is fantastic. It's one of the best things I've seen. Too many of our services promote dependence rather than independence, and this is definitely the direction I think we need to be going. I thank you so much for being our guest today, Jay.
I appreciate the opportunity. Look forward to talking with you guys soon.
And I appreciate all of our audience. We do this every Tuesday at 12:30, so join us again next week for the Clinical Consultation Network. Thank you, everybody.